remember that when we delivered our ADAPT 12 core competencies at the CIO Edge in February this year, you had a few comments that it's fine to talk about that the competency needs to be around modernizing legacy and driving operational effectiveness, building a data-driven organization, and driving technology thought leadership and transforming as a business leader. And you had a certain view on why it's not happening, according to your experience in last 20, 30 years that you've been in the industry. So I would like to understand from your perspective as to what is happening, what is the real challenge?
I think, thank you again for your compliments on the keynote. It was nice. It was quite a good experience. Essentially, as I said to you, we can all feel disappointed a bit about the uptake of certain technologies. I think in that CIO Edge conference, you mentioned that machine learning, artificial intelligence, and some of these technologies have not been adopted as much as you would have liked to, or all of us would have liked to.
Yes.
And it goes back to something I said in the keynote, because the current IT environment has been made complicated. And some of us, as in technology folks, will have to take a lot of responsibility for that. We can't lay all the blame on the business. It's us. So we need to, first of all, understand what is the current landscape first, and then only worry about how do we actually make it better, and have some consideration to not doing the same mistakes again and again. I don't think we are spending a lot of time on that. So we park the problems that we have experienced in the past and then try to jump onto the next thing, and we commit the same mistakes again. In 5 years' time, I'm sure we'll be sitting here and we'll be saying, some of the adoptions of the digital labor that Dean Nielsen was talking about are not being adopted as much as they thought it would be. So fundamentally, the issue is that IT shops will have to understand how to keep reinventing themselves, how not to leave a trail of legacy all the time they do something. So some of the fundamental things are around that. And the second one is, I think if we talk about thought leadership, technology thought leadership. Sometimes I feel, I was a CIO myself, that CIOs and CTOs cannot become arrogant. Thought leadership is about demonstrating what technology can do in real terms, and sometimes convert it into reality and show them. Because we actually go and talk a lot of theory. We go and say this is the next big thing, and artificial intelligence will change the world, or machine learning will change the world, but we don't back it up with actually demonstrating how it can become a reality, how easily it can be implemented, and so on. So I think we do have some ways to go, and I think thought leadership is also about trust. Why would you consider me a thought leader in the subject if I don't earn your trust that you really know what you're talking about? So for me, I think there is a lot of obligation on CIOs and CTOs to actually earn the trust that what they are talking is not just a dump of all the technology jargons that they have learned in conferences like this, but more about how it is really applicable and how they can transform.
So from your experience, you've been a CIO, CTO, and you've also had a dual role of CISO and CIO at the same time in very large corporations. How were you able to overcome some of these challenges? What was your go-to in terms of talking to the business, building that credibility as a CIO that you should be looked upon? You should be the first person to be thought of when they're thinking about implementing a new technology, which doesn't happen right now.
I don't think I was extremely successful or something, but I've been modestly successful in some places. But I think one of the important things, as I said, is it is a two-way street. I said we should respect their knowledge of technology as much as they should respect my knowledge of technology. I gave you an example where one area of defense actually came up with a really bright technology, and I was able to say, well done, how can I help you implement the technology? So I think if you make it a two-way street, first of all, so that we acknowledge that we are not the single custodians of technology knowledge in the organization, I think that will help. And the second thing is, as I said, you do in small chunks, demonstrate something that can actually touch them. And it doesn't always have to be jazzy and glittering toys that you deliver. I think I gave the example of the keynote where people in the operations area of defense, their main issue is how do I use IT in a bandwidth constrained environment? You get, as I said, 128 kbps, and I got a lot of traffic, including my email to my mom and dad, saying hi, how, that sometimes get to the bottom of the queue. But if you introduce a technology that can actually somehow either increase that bandwidth or get more data to flow in the limited bandwidth they have, that to me is a far more impactful technology implementation than giving the latest model of mobile phone or some absolutely chassis new front ends or something like that. So to me, it's about understanding what is the real pain point and demonstrating what you can do to help them address that real pain point. And that goes to the original point I made about understand who your customer is. Right. So if you want to leave defense out and then take my toll days, toll logistics, we had a global forwarding business. So they say that you pick up some clothing from a factory in China that needs to come and hit Kmart here in Australia, just as an example, say that. So you don't know, the entire information flow starts from when the shipment leaves, that what happens to the truck that actually takes that shipment from the factory to the port, when does that actually get on a flight to Australia or on a ship to Australia, the entire supply chain of information. What we fail to understand is that actually who is going to be most affected is the customers who want to buy those clothes. If that clothes is not found on the shelves, the customers are going to get upset. We completely forget that. We go more into what is the technology, what's wrong with this system and that system and so on. So I think we will benefit a fair bit if we actually understand the real end customer, what he or she wants, and then go backwards and say, okay, what technology can help.
Okay. And I know that now you're advising a lot of companies as a strategic advisor. What are the key projects that you're seeing that they're investing in?
Sure, I think a lot of them is to do with, as I said, to use a broader term, digitization, and actually taking some of the onus on customers. For example, there is in DXC technology where I'm currently consulting, there is a project which actually looks at, without naming the organization they're doing it for, they are actually taking images and putting machine learning to analyze the images. The reason for that is that the particular organization has human beings who will go through all these graphic images. It's to do with national security, and sometimes they can be very disturbing. Look at some of the images, can be very, very disturbing. I've been in that field, so I know how it is. So you put machine learning on top so that a machine actually goes through the images and picks some of these things, so that the impact on the mental health of the individuals concerned is greatly reduced. So that's a very good project DXC is doing now. So if you take that example, it's not about machine learning per se. It is about the taking away the mental health impact, because a lot of people are taking mental health related leave because it is confronting to see some of the images, which can't go into details. It's very confronting. It can really put you off badly. So if you take that as a very good example of what we are trying to do, or if you take augmented reality.
Okay, that would be interesting to know.
We are actually doing a project where the Air Force is trying to have the maintenance engineers, I don't know if you ever seen, if you go into the maintenance engineers will have to have a book in their hand and some other instruments here, they have to write down notes, just a really complicated thing. So augmented reality helps them to see the issue, talk to the interface, and then get things done without really having to carry quite a few things. That actually helps in the productivity. And ultimately, if you look back, it is about getting the aircraft fly quickly. Not so much about anything else. So there are some really interesting projects that are happening.
And these budgets, where do the budgets come for these projects then? Are you seeing them coming from traditional IT budgets or just business budgets?
No, it should come from, because it is business which is getting benefited.
Okay.
So if a CIO goes and says, first of all, I don't like the word IT budget. I think I told you this a few times. It's about the cost of IT to help you succeed. So I firmly believe that you should have more of an IT costing model than an IT budget model.
Makes sense.
Anyway, but to answer your question, I don't think such projects like I mentioned can succeed if it comes from the CIO and saying this is my budget.
Okay.
It should come from the business. They should champion it. And we should just be evangelists and trying to make it work.
Okay. And what about, I want to go back to the IT costing model. What is your thought on that? That's radical. So let's hear about what should happen. should move from?
I really think that IT CIOs organizations, IT organization should have a clear view of what is the cost of doing IT. For example, I give you a mobile phone, right? So instead of saying, I want a budget for rolling out 10,000 mobile phones at X dollars a year, that's budgeting. I would like to really understand what is the cost of that mobile phone. If you look at all aspects of that cost, you got a phone, you got a plan, and then you got data on that phone, and then you got it in case you lose it, there will be something. So if you actually put it, and then there will be maintenance, 24/7 support. What happens if you call somebody? So if you just put a cross section of the service called a mobile phone given to you, there are so many costs that add up. So the cost of a mobile phone as a service is X dollars. So, and then, then if you actually look at all the services an IT shop provides, and then you have the costing view, and then you can have, and then it translate into a unit cost for the business. For example, as I told you, the toll example, consignment note. How many consignment notes you raise, and what is the cost of IT per consignment note? So if you can get to that level, then I think it will be a much better discussion you can have.
Sounds like an attribution model is required.
Correct, yeah.
As
Absolutely.
to we have costs and then we have revenue and then you attribute the cost.
To the, rather than just saying, we are the IT shop, we have traditionally had so many bills we need to pay our suppliers, and we have to pay so much salary to our employees and contractors, add them all up and put a contingency of 10% and say, this is my budget, I want that budget.
Is someone doing it right now?
First, I think we made the first attempt of it at Toll. I think we really made a good job of it, Toll, trying to understand what the costing model is. And we did I think it's still ongoing, but we made a good start of it at Defense as well, trying to say what's the costing model.
Because it takes me back to the question that we ask from our survey, in our surveys, as to what is the proportion of your entire IT budget that is allocated to run, grow and transform initiatives, and we've seen that 60% of it is just running IT, while 2020 is pretty much on grow and transform. And I do assume a lot of outside IT budget is coming from business, moving away from IT as well, and that was also an attachment point, as in a point of issue for a lot of CIOs as to that the budget is getting out of their hands. Did you witness any of it?
Quite a fair bit, because we
insecurity.
Yeah, I think so, and our constant desire to keep running some of the old systems, and it's a problem, right? So I think most CIOs today will have this problem, like you found out in your survey. But we have to really understand that if the business actually tries to champion transformation, you will see the pyramid being inverted. You spend more on transformation and less on run. But as I said before, so far our run budget, the run part of what you said, is nothing but the sum total of all the bills you pay.
Yes.
Right? If you convert that. Because one of the challenges I gave to my own team in one organization was, if suppose we were to compete with, say, the Infosys or the Wipros or the IBMs of this world, and win the business, IT business from the organization, what would you bid at? How would you go about doing that? That will drive a costing mentality, saying we have to win this business. What is the best price we can pay if we want to win this business? IT shops don't think about it that way. IT shops are more about saying, I know what my fixed costs are and I'm going to add it all up. So it's a bit of a, I won't say revolutionary, it's a bit of an evolutionary thinking. Once you do that, then I think business will start respecting us too.
Right. Do you think that currently the business, the perception of IT or typically the CIO is restricted, and which is why the evolution of the role is also not there? Why I ask this question is we've talked about budgets and we've talked about transforming as a business leader, but we don't see an evolutionary path for the CIO moving into running an entire company. That doesn't happen. A CSO does go become a CEO, and people who like yourself are getting out and becoming strategic advisors, while we have a dearth of talent at the entry level. So there's going to be a huge gap within IT in terms of just providing that leadership. So just want to understand what is the solution? What do you see? What do you foresee?
Yeah, I think we have to understand what business we are in, and we have to really have a bit of humility to say that we need to be understanding you much better. And as I said, we have to encourage innovation happening everywhere and try to be the facilitator of innovations and new technologies rather than become the controller. So if you have this controlling mentality, saying it's all under me, then you'll be treated like a cost center.
That's a great advice.
If you're at least thinking about, I'm going to be a facilitator, I'm humble enough to learn from you, and then I think one day CIOs will become CEOs. In fact, I had a great Gartner session once when they said, how many CIOs have become CEOs? I think there is one. There's only one, I think,
One.
as far as I know.
I think Starbucks, probably.
Schneider, I think.
Schneider,
Maybe.
yeah.
Is it? I don't know.
Starbucks.
So I know only one, maximum maybe two. One day, I think, before my life ends, I would like to see a CIO being
Well, on that
promoted to
note,
CEO.
all the best. I do hope maybe we see you as a CEO for another company.
Thank you.
But thank you
Hopefully
for
we'll
giving us time. It was an incredible pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you.